A gentle yet icy murmur slips from the lips of the youngest prince at the stroke of midnight behind the walls of the palace, which are surrounded by quiet secrets. As soon as the lights go down, I mourn for my mother. What could cause a child who was born into wealth and luxury to cry every night? Prince Louis speaks up tonight, and the truth is far more haunting than the monarchy ever prepared for. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any updates before we delve deeper into the true implications of this for the royal family. It started off as a typical evening in Windsor's well-kept silence. However, everything was altered by what was overheard that evening. A service worker who was used to royal outbursts and bedtime commotion froze in disbelief upon hearing what she had heard. It was a soft, wavering voice that whispered with terrible finality, not a plea for a toy or a protest about brushing one's teeth. As soon as the lights go down, I mourn for my mother. Since Catherine wasn't the mother Prince Louis was referring to, the words didn't appear innocent until they weren't. The palace was swiftly struck by the shock waves. Aides initially thought the child was just confused, possibly due to obvious exhaustion. However, the identical line was said almost every night, not just once or twice. Murmurs would reverberate throughout the room, even during naps during the day. "Don't be scared," she advises. Palace insiders started to freak out. Louis wasn't simply talking about grief. It was vivid, particular, memory-based, and completely unaccounted for. Some attempted to write it off as a child's imaginative fantasy growing in the seclusion of royal nurseries. However, when one nanny unintentionally left an audio recorder on at bedtime, that notion was disproved. Those who heard it were shaken by what it captured. Louis spoke to an invisible person in a gentle, understanding voice. He was not afraid, he wasn't having fun, he was communicating. His message was unambiguous. "She comes over when I'm by myself. She also tears when I weep and has a rose-like scent." The most dependable employees of the family were now muttering behind closed doors. Some said it was just the innocence of childhood. Darker possibilities were mentioned by those who were more shaken. "He's not imagining this," a top aide was supposed to have said. "He's thinking about her." When it became evident that the mummy in question wasn't Catherine, the topic changed from "What is Louis saying?" to "Who is he remembering the moment?" The royal panic reached a climax. They alerted security. Psychologists were mentioned. There was a silent exchange between William, Camilla, and Charles. However, there was no consensus on how to react. When the youngest prince seems troubled by a grief he shouldn't have experienced, what should you say? Then came the drawings. Crayon sketches discovered on Louis's bedroom floor showed a woman with a tilted head, delicate, lovely eyes, and a necklace that seemed uncannily familiar. There was no denying the likeness to Princess Diana. Furthermore, Louis had never seen those specific pictures, even though kids frequently sketch what they observe. They weren't on his iPad or in his nursery. Nevertheless, she kept appearing. The palace was now facing more than just an emotional crisis. It had to contend with the resurgence of guilt, legacy, and remembrance, because Louis had discovered more than just sadness in his naive murmurs. It was the truth, a reality that the monarchy concealed under pomp and silence, and it was now wailing through the one unexpected royal in the middle of night. However, what if Prince Louis's sobs at night are caused by a forbidden memory that the royal family has been working non-stop to obliterate rather than by fear? He's got a mother, she is still alive, she loves him very much. However, Louis's nighttime sobs are for a different woman. He says a woman holds his hand while no one else is around. A woman who exudes sadness and roses. Is the young prince remembering someone who was never supposed to be remembered, or is he just dreaming? There is more than just silence in Louis's chamber. It pays attention, and he hears something in that area. Staff members close to the family claim that Louis has started talking about midnight visits from a woman who doesn't look like anyone he knows. He talks softly, almost respectfully, about how she encourages him not to be scared, sings lullabies that none of his caregivers know, and rubs his hair. In the darkness of the night, his voice, which is often lively and playful during the day, becomes melancholy, and he calls her mommy every single time. It is claimed that Catherine, who has made every effort to provide a calm environment for her kids, has become more and more uneasy due to Louis's emotional outbursts as well as their disturbing regularity. There is no playlist with the music he hums in the morning. Then there were dozens of sketches. A woman's face is repeatedly painted with a dexterity and tenderness that are much beyond his years. The woman's eyes are piercing, her head is inclined, and she smiles softly. "It's Diana," muttered one advisor who happened to stumble upon the pictures. "It's obvious." Catherine reportedly sought advice from a trusted senior royal advisor who had previously worked with Diana in her latter years in a moment of silent desperation. She didn't pose a political question. It was not a calculated move. It was maternal. "Do you think that a child can sense things before they are even born?" Her voice faltered. The advisor, who was apparently shaken, just cautioned that the past rarely returns to sleep once it has been roused. He did not provide a definitive response. An elderly nanny who had long since retired, but was nonetheless periodically called upon to help the younger royals, provided a sobering affirmation. Several times she had seen Louis speaking into the corner of the room, not in a light-hearted, pretending manner, but with genuineness. She declares, "I'm safe now." At one point, he bluntly stated to her, but they hurt her heart before. She felt cold when she heard those words. Speculation developed along with the murmurs. Is it possible that Louis is mourning a stranger, or worse, someone whose entire tale has never been shared to him? Now carefully drawn into the circle, royal historians presented an odd but convincing theory. Bloodline memory, the notion that trauma can leave an impression on subsequent generations, particularly if it is violent or unresolved. The monarchy, which was founded on ancestry, was now plagued by its own ghost. Furthermore, Louis felt that the emotional resonance was too great to overlook. Diana's tragedy seemed to have bound the youngster who should have survived it, not via schooling, not through bedtime tales, but through a power beyond the grasp of protocol. It was dubbed ancestral echo by one expert, another silent retaliation. It was deemed harmful by the crown. Even yet, Louis kept drawing, whispering, and crying for the woman who held him when no one else was there. Who in the palace is most afraid of Diana's return? Nevertheless, if her memory endures in Louis's tears, and why? The instant Camilla heard tiny Louis say her name in the same sentence as Diana's, according to royal sources, she exploded. She apparently lost her temper over this ghost worship. However, it was too late. A battle of legacy had been rekindled by the child's remarks, and Camilla's crown might be the next casualty. It took place at an apparently harmless family get-together. Louis posed an unexpected question in his customary inquisitive manner. "Was Diana your mommy too before you became mine?" he asked Camilla as he turned to face her. Like a dagger, the words pierced through the room. Stunned and humiliated, Camilla allegedly stood motionless before erupting into a rage that shook everyone. She yelled, "Get that name out of his mouth," with a bitterness that even Charles found unsettling. Behind the palace walls was more than a child's misunderstanding. It was a risky change. Camilla had been fighting valiantly for years to change her name from mistress to queen consort. But suddenly, everything was in danger of falling apart because of the sadness of one child. It was unpleasant, upsetting, and terrifying to consider that Louis might view Diana as more than simply a memory. Rather, she might be his genuine mother in some spiritual and emotional sense. The ensuing altercation was no longer muttered. Catherine stood her ground because she was very protective of her kids. According to reports, she told Camilla, "He's a child, not a soldier in your PR war." There was silence in the room. Something changed in their already precarious dynamic when lines were drawn. Whispers and glares started to erode the previously meticulously crafted royal unity. Charles was confronted with a problem he believed he had put aside decades ago while he was in the middle of this collapse. Camilla put a lot of pressure on him. She insisted that he finally put a stop to the Diana myth. She begged him to step in and stop Louis from using that term ever again. Charles, however, who was obviously aging from the stress, provided no definitive answer, because deep down, even he knew Diana's ghost had never truly left. The letters then came to light. Camilla is said to have written private, tearful notes to a close friend, which started to silently circulate among palace staff. She conveyed an increasing anxiety in them. He is evolving into her. That boy, he's turning into the ghost they never stopped mourning, one line said. It was not intended for the letters to be visible. However, they have now taken on a life of their own, demonstrating that a queen is challenged by memory rather than controversy. Furthermore, the story was already eluding them outside the castle gates. The public started to accept Louis's sensitivity, his innocence, and his unexplainable bond with Diana without realizing the mayhem that was going on behind the scenes. Comparisons abound on social media. He was termed the reincarnated heart of Diana by headlines. Unknowingly, the child had turned into a spokesperson for a legacy that the company had long sought to suppress. Camilla was unable to stop it, even though she could see it happening. Louis always had that lovely smile on his face. Behind her serene exterior, a storm was always simmering whenever he gazed into a camera with those familiar eyes. The frail heart of a 6-year-old who dared to remember threatened the future she believed she had secured once more. But this time, it was not scandal or newspapers. However, another family member starts telling Louis the truth as Camilla demands silence. Furthermore, there is no way to reverse the effects. The love of a mother may both protect and confine. The poised princess, Catherine, must now deal with the consequences of a secret she has withheld from her youngest son. And then night after night, he starts asking the same frightening question. Was she your mommy too? Her calmness falters. Catherine thought she could protect Louis from the past for years, that Diana's ghost would stay at bay if she brought him up in a loving, stable, and warm environment. However, that delusion is now dissolving. Innocent curiosities are no longer Louis' inquiries. They have an aching that Catherine can no longer ignore, and they are sharper and more persistent. He looks into her eyes every time he speaks, Mommy, looking for something she's afraid to mention. She tells him stories about benevolent monarchs, courageous queens, and royal forefathers that are harmless. Louis, meanwhile, is not interested in stories. He seeks the truth. He is curious as to why a woman in his dreams is addressing him by name. He somehow already understands why her voice sounds like a lullaby, and why people stop talking when he asks them about her. And so the palace falls silent once again. The lights dim, the corridors empty, and the youngest prince returns to his room, where questions linger louder than answers. A child searching for comfort has unknowingly reopened a wound the monarchy spent decades trying to seal. Was it imagination, inherited memory, or something far deeper that no crown can command or erase? One truth is undeniable. Some legacies do not fade with time, they wait to be remembered. And if Prince Louis is truly listening to echoes of the past, then the royal family may soon be forced to confront a history they never wanted spoken aloud. Stay with us, because what comes next could change how the world sees the crown forever.